Relationships? Why are they so difficult? That's the first question I'm going to ask when I get to the maker. With my guest today, Steve Wormer, we're going to delve into the complexities and learn how to reignite some of those important relationships and have just hang on to your hat, because we're going to really understand a lot more about how to keep warm, get those warm fuzzies back in our relationships. But first, well, good, beautiful day, you beautiful, beautiful souls. This is Charla Anderson, host of the Charla Anderson Show, collector and connector of fascinating people. And everyone is fascinating, especially you. But first, we're going to have a little 22-second mini vacation. We're going to breathe in some calm for 7 seconds. We're going to hold for 4 seconds and breathe out gratitude for 11 seconds. So join me in a little mini vacation, a little be still and know. Here we go. Breathe in. Hold. Relax. Release. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Whew. Don't we all need that? Put those phones down for a minute and be still and know, take a moment to breathe. So multiple times a day. And as my guest today, Steve Wormer, says, is gratitude is the key. Gratitude is everything. It's a choice, and choose it several times a day. Right, Steve?
Charlotte, thank you so much for having me. I wish we could do that exercise a few more times. I don't do that enough during the week. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, so we met through the Change book. You're in book number 22, right?
That's right.
And I'm in book number 21 with Jim Lutes, Jim Britt, and Les Brown. This is a wonderful opportunity. And we've also met through Terry Lee Harrison, Bree Talks. Harrison and Bree Talks. And
right.
So we've just kind of woven through some of our connections. And by the way, the Change book is a credibility book. And if you have, I always encourage anyone that would love to have this kind of a credibility piece in your repertoire. Contact Steve if you know Steve. Contact me if you know me, because these aren't on Amazon. They are. It's a whole different system, but it's an amazing opportunity. So reach out if you want to be in one of those books, because we want to share it with you. Right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
So that was fun. So so Steve, you're in Tennessee. I'm in Texas. Tell us about who you are in this world. Who are you? And we'll talk a little bit about what you do and how you serve.
Oh my goodness, where do you start with that? I'll start by telling you my better side, which is I've been married for 29 years to my best friend Rebecca. It's interesting because our 29th anniversary was Sunday, and I actually did not see her all day long. I was couldn't control it. My youngest son was going to a camp, and it's an hour southeast of Atlanta, and you can't check him in until 3 p.m. So we leave the day before, a couple of us go down, you check him in on Sunday. By the time you get out of there, it's 4 or 5 o'clock. So I didn't get back till 1:30 in the morning, technically the day after our anniversary. Don't worry, I took her out to dinner last night and made up for it, all that stuff. But she has been just a wonderful influence on my life. And we have 3 children, 18, 16, and 14. If we have time, I'd love to tell that story, because how we started our family is in a non-traditional way, so to speak, and it's actually quite miraculous how God did it. But like I said, those kids are all teenagers now, so you can continue to pray for us. And we're in the full-time ministry. Yes, please. Thank you. We lead a church here in the Memphis area. I've been a pastor for about 15 years. Led 3 different churches. Also, we have a nonprofit that's called Hurt to Hope, which helps people with their unprocessed emotions. For example, unforgiveness, bitterness, anxiety, relationship challenges. basically anything holding you back in life. And what we have found that typically there's at least one person, usually there's more, but there's usually one central person that's inflicted most of the wounds in our hearts that's caused some of that unprocessed emotions. Usually it's a sibling or a parent or a former spouse or a current spouse, quite honestly. That's about 90% of the time. So there's that. And then, trying to launch a business centered around public speaking, coaching, and writing, all at the same time. So, it, just depends on which hat I'm wearing, what we talk about at the given time.
Yeah, life keeps lifing, doesn't it? So, lots of prayers for three teenagers. I actually, when my oldest turned 14, I created this saying that if they were born at 14, there wouldn't be any. They come out so cute.
That's funny. That's true too.
Yeah, like what was I thinking? They were so cute, and I have three now. What am I going to do? Yeah,
Right.
so,
I can relate to that.
yeah, I would love to hear the story, the miraculous story, because I think that is a whole crux of who you are, right?
Yeah, it's actually the story, and I'll tell it here in a second, was the basis of my first book, which is called Rivers of Hope. And, but my wife and I, like a lot of young couples, I think I was 27, she was 25. We dated for 3 years before that. Had that American dream, work and be successful, have the house in the burbs and the white picket fence and, 2.2 children or whatever it is and a dog. Yeah. And we were on our way to a lot of that, had the house built in the burbs, had a couple of dogs, were doing well in our careers. And we were trying the start the family thing. And I'll try to abbreviate it, but my wife had a couple of miscarriages. And honestly, at that time, at that age, I wasn't emotional. I hadn't dealt with all my emotional stuff yet. And so it hurt me, but imagine how it made her feel. And I didn't know how to support her as well as I could have. But that led to 5 miscarriages in a course of 6 years. And this is all, it's intense. Because I can remember, this is showing my age a little bit, but at work, we used to have do you remember the Nextel cell phones? They were part cell phone and part walkie-talkie, and the concept was great, but they didn't always work all the time. But I remember, the 20 or 30 people in my network on the the walkie-talkie. I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be a dad. She's pregnant again. She's pregnant again. And then I remember after about the second time, you don't do that as quickly because your hope's been dashed and you don't want to reach that high again to be let down. But this is all before we were Christians. And we became Christians in 2004. And shortly after that, we started praying about adoption. And sure enough, something like that you pray about, and then all of a sudden an opportunity presents itself. It wasn't God's plan. It was just a passing conversation of somebody that knew somebody. But it thrust us into action. And what I mean by that is, you find, for us, we found an adoption agency, went through all the training. You start to build a portfolio file, you have the home study done and the pictures taken with the house and the dogs and all that stuff. And we were picked fairly quickly after that portfolio was done. Now, that time frame was several months. But we were picked by a birth mother that was 7 months pregnant. And my wife went to all her appointments. She lived about an hour away, and she let us name the baby right out the gate. We got to know her family really well. So really, it was going great. And in the hospital, fast forward to the delivery date, it was predetermined that I don't even know how this was decided, but I was going to be the first one to hold the baby. And I had never experienced that before. Obviously, not ever been in a dad, never been in a delivery room. So that's a whole other conversation about what. Like, I won't even go into the shock that I felt walking into that room, because I couldn't actually be there during the delivery, but shortly after. But long story short, she changed her mind an hour before we were to go home with the baby. She had the baby on a Friday, and this was on a Sunday. And as this is going on, our church an hour away is having an outdoor service, and they're, hey, Steve and Rebecca are coming home with the baby, first time parents, please be praying for them. And so, like, it was intense. Now, we can come back and revisit part of that if you want, but we went on to have 5 total, what the world would say, failed adoptions in a 5-year period. Our adoption agency parted ways with us. We never found out why, although we think it's probably because we crossed the 40-year-old threshold. And going into year 5, we're like, God, this is worse than starting over. It's like we've poured 4 years into this. We're exhausted. We're drained. We don't have any leads. Now what? And I can tell you, even though it didn't happen, like 48 hours away from that prayer, God presented another opportunity. Now, why would I tell you that if it wasn't the one? We're praying for one child. I tell you that because each time we came to our wits' end, he provided another opportunity that sustained our hope. And that's how we knew we were within God's will. He kept sustaining us and giving us opportunities. And we finally arrived at a decision in our hearts of, we're going to pray for this. Yes, we've been praying for this. But we're going to praise him in advance. Okay, God, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the child you've already picked out for us, but haven't revealed it to us yet. And so in year 5, and there's a lot more to it, but I'm going to try to be as short as I can, he gave us 3 children at one time. From 2 different situations. When the adoptions were, when they came into our house, they were 3, 2, and 1 month old. So by the time the adoptions were final, they were like 4, 2.5, and 6 months old. And our joke about it, for those of you that like basketball, we never got to play man-to-man defense. We went straight to zone. But yeah, that's the story.
Oh my goodness. So your 3 teenagers are from adoption, and they are very close in age, it sounds like. Were they from the same family? Are they siblings?
The two older are full siblings, and my youngest is the one at camp. He's from a different situation altogether, but they're all interwoven in our church, or at that time, in our church in Nashville, Tennessee at the time.
Whoa. What so my show is about overcoming and hope, right? So you just did it all in one nutshell here. There's a lot of overcoming. First of all, not being able to have children, and then having one ripped from your hands virtually. And bless her heart, of course, that was a hard decision for her. And hopefully the child was that the first one you talked about, but hopefully that child is great. And you, man, so it's like all or nothing, right? It's like all or nothing, all in. Woo.
Yeah. Well, if I may, let me take you back to that scene in the hospital room. My wife was with her and learned about it before I did. I was in our room was a separate room, and I was in that room. I don't even remember the circumstances of how we were separate at that time, but coming into my room was a couple of social workers, a couple of case workers from the adoption agency at the time. It was like 5 or 6 people were coming in my room to tell me this news. And then they were doing their job, wanting to make sure I was okay. And I said, I need to respectfully ask y'all to leave, please. And they insisted on going through their process. I'm like, and they were like, why do you want us to leave? I said, I need time with my God right now before I talk to y'all. I'll be glad to talk to you, but I need some space. And I needless to say, I prayed. I went down to the birth mother's room where her mom was, her other daughter was, my wife is, and she's holding her little baby girl. And what I haven't told you is the night before, my wife and I went out to dinner, and we asked the birth mother if we could get her something to eat. My wife said to me during dinner, are we 100% surrendered to God's will in this situation? I remember saying, probably 90%. And my wife said, well, we better pray the other 10%, don't you think? I said, absolutely. And so we were surrendered. Not easy what we endured, but surrendered. So when I went to her room, the Spirit of God was strong in me. And she was crying and said, first thing as soon as she saw me, she broke down and said, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I kissed her on the forehead. And I said, you owe no apology. I said, this is God's child first. Your child second, and anything we can do to help, that's what we're here for. And we're the godchild to that parent today. That child ended up back in our home with a fractured skull a month later. And I remember saying to God, what is this? What are you doing here? And now I know that probably lends to more questions right now, but I'm wrestling with God. Are you trying to right or wrong? Was this your will all along? All of that. But
a 1-month-old baby with this broken skull?
The same child had a fractured skull. When you get hospitals involved, social workers involved, DCS involved, ultimately we were asked if we would watch her for a period of time. And we said yes, and we watched that child for 6 months as she healed, and she ended up going back to her mom, and then we went on our adoption journey that I described to you earlier.
Oh man! So I keep getting chills and tears. Oh my goodness, this is the roller coaster. But like I said, life keeps lifing, and what I want to emphasize is something I said in the very beginning. Gratitude is a choice, and choose it several times a day, because this is what I've learned in my 7 decades. So it's like, when, and this is the way I say it often, Jesus wasn't a wimpy Jesus. Jesus is not wimpy. He did not beg God, please, 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 please help me heal this person, right? Help me feed the fish, whatever. He did not beg. It's always thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Get up and walk. Open your eyes. Eat the fish. Jesus is one powerful, and it was in gratitude and release. So it's like I can ask, believe, expect, receive, but I don't have to beg. I can ask and expect that it's already on its way, receive, and lay it at his feet. Let it go, because we so often negate our prayers, right? With but something else.
Yeah. And it's a choice, right? We tend to think that gratitude is an emotion, and it can be. We think it can be a process. It can be, but it all starts with the choice. I don't know about you. I have not yet met the person that can hold more than one dominant thought at a time. Like if I'm worrying, of course, Paul talks about that all throughout the New Testament. That's what I'm consumed with. If I'm bitter towards somebody, it consumes me. But the same is true about joy or gratitude. It pushes the negative out. But like you said, we have to choose it all throughout the day because the negative comes back in naturally. But the great thing about gratitude is it accumulates. So like if even somebody in the worst spot, which we want to be sensitive to that, if you can have them just document or verbalize if they don't even have the energy to document, what's one thing you're grateful for? And it's amazing how, I had a home cooked meal today. The next thing you know what? I have a refrigerator with bottled water. It's cold outside. The heat's working in the house. I've got a winter coat. I've got warm sheets on my bed. The washer and dryer work. I mean, next thing you know, you've reeled off 20 things without even giving it a second thought. And then you can go deeper in your heart about more complex things as you're choosing gratitude.
I absolutely love that. And this is true, I believe, of depression specifically, and even anxiety, certain things that we're so focused, and it's not belittling any of this. It's just what I have observed. They're so focused on what's wrong and their own hurt that they can't step out. And when you can just think of just one thing I think it's two things. One thing to get gratitude, thankful for, and the other is maybe helping someone or something else. Maybe the dog, something that you reach out and you start opening that door to look outward instead of focused on inward. And it's not easy. I'm not saying any of that. I'm not diminishing any of that. But I'm like, aren't you happy you have toenails? I think it can be as simple as something like that to start that process of retraining your mind, retraining your brain, refreshing your mindset.
Right. That's so good. What I heard out of that was when you're able, serve someone. But we have to, it depends on where you're at, right? You have to meet people where they're at. So, I want to be real sensitive to those that may be listening, that it's a difficult decision just to get out of bed today.
Yeah, it's not judgment. It's just observation and a way. I had a situation, a friend called, I wouldn't have recognized her voice if it hadn't been for her number several years ago, but she was in such a dark place that she could barely function. And for her to call is a really big deal when somebody is in that situation, to pick up the phone and call anybody. And so somehow I was able to, I think within 5 minutes, she had shifted that enough that she sounded better. She sounded different. And I don't think she's ever been quite that deep since then. And so that's a story that, I mean, I don't know who am I, but it wasn't me. And I say this a lot on my show just because this is nothing about religion to me. This is about relationship, which is your expertise, relationships. But religion so often is keeps God small. God isn't small. He can do all things. We can do all things that Jesus did, and even more. This is about relationship and about love and unconditional love and love. So loving as God loves. And I say it often at the end, in my show at the end. Usually, I'm like, you can't do anything to be loved more or less by God. And so there, if God is love, he can't be not love. So this conversation has gone completely different than I think either one of us would have thought, but that's the way we roll here.
Right.
Hey, I want to do something. This will be a first for me, but I'm going to say, I'm going to take just a little mini break and tell you guys about one of the things I'm most passionate about, and that is, core cellular health. You have crunchy cells or squishy cells, and I'm going to tell you about that and take a little mini break about that, and then we'll be right back with Steve Warmer. I'm taking a mini moment to share about cell health. One of the most important pieces in our body. Are your cells hard and crunchy? Are they soft and malleable? And let me tell you, if they're hard and crunchy, the nutrients can't get in and out. And if they're soft and squishy and malleable, the nutrients can. So when you have good, soft, malleable cells, you have better brain function, hair quality, heart function, skin elasticity, inner organs are better, and your joints and muscles are better. Whoop, see that? But like 99% of North Americans, we're out of balance in our omega-3 to omega-6. Test, don't guess. We've got a test. It will absolutely give you your results on a full scale test of your balance. You need to be 3 to 1 or better, like 99% of North Americans are not. So we've got a simple solution. 1 second shot of beautiful golden omega-3 oil a day. Test, don't guess. Now back to the show. Okay, we can cut that out if it works, and if it doesn't work. So how'd that come across to you?
You remembered.
Yeah, I did somehow or another. So, so this is, I'm just, my name is a chat. We just chat, right? And so we want to make sure people know who you are, how to find you, how to spell your name, how to spell your website. And so, clarify all that real quick, and we'll move on.
Sure. I'm pretty easy to find. The biggest mistake people make is my last name. They think it's warmer, like the weather, but it's actually Wormer, Wormer. And you can find me on Facebook with that name. My website's www.stevewormer.com. I'm on YouTube. I'm really easy to find.
Yes, and you're an inspirational speaker, you're a trainer, you do a lot of things. So in your regard to this relationship training that I think that you are, that's your livelihood and the pastoring and all that. But seriously, decades ago, I was like, the first thing I want to ask is, why are relationships so hard when we've got to deal with all the stuff you dealt with, when we've got to deal with all this other stuff? Why are relationships so hard? And what would you say to somebody who's asking that?
Well, it's a complex answer, or there's many answers to the question, I rather should say. The first thing that comes to my mind, Charla, is it's because I have my own script. Like, I have expectations of what my relationship should look like. However, the other person, whoever it is that we're talking about, right, they have their script, and they don't always align, and we don't always communicate those scripts. And I had somebody say to me one time, and it just has always resonated, and I always share it: unexpressed expectations will always lead to hurt feelings. And I was like, wow, that's so true.
Unmet expectations is the reason for disappointment. It is the core reason. Unmet expectations, and we don't communicate our expectations. We assume them, don't you? And you remember
we do,
right?
We do. I'll give you an example. Let's say it's Thanksgiving, and your kids are off to school and off to college, or maybe they're young adults, but anyway, they're coming home for Thanksgiving. Now, if you're the dad, you're helping out where you can or wherever your wife tells you to. For a lot of the moms, they're cooking Thanksgiving dinner, the traditional dinner. They've got ideas that the kids are going to be home a little early. Maybe they're going to help with the preparations, but at least they're going to be there for dinner, right? And then there's going to be dessert. There's going to be cleaning up the dishes together as they're singing or conversing, and how's school and how's your friends. And then you're going to go sit by the fire, or maybe the dad's got the game on. You see, all these things are scripts. But the kids haven't seen their friends in 4 months. and they want to eat, and they're out the door with their script. They haven't even helped you with the dishes. No, I'm not saying everybody's like that, but you get the point. Like, everybody's got their own script, but if we're not communicating, then there's feelings getting hurt all the way around. And just like gratitude accumulates, those unprocessed scripts can accumulate over time too. And those disappointments cause a wall to form between those that we're closest to.
Totally, totally, totally. I mean, you just described half my life, right? We want
Mine too.
we have so unmet expectations, and this is a huge conversation because I don't think it's addressed enough out in our world, right? So, unmet expectations are the leading cause of disappointment and upset. Upset draws upset. So then it's, this gets the escalation, and then we circle into ourselves. We focus back into ourselves and what's wrong instead of what's possible. Right. And
Yeah.
so how do you manage that? I mean, I'm sure you primarily, it seems like you're doing with marriages. Now, I'm not married right now, but I had my taste of that. Got my t-shirts, right? So, but I think that is your focus primarily, isn't it? On getting that spark back and getting that trust back and getting that excitement back that, that it's hard to sustain over time, but it's worth it. It's worth the effort.
Well, I mean, I do help married couples, but I think what we're talking about is more universal than just married couples. I'll give you an example. Especially if we know somebody really well, like those in our immediate family, we know them really, really well, right? So they know how to put, we think we do. Yeah, right. They know how to push our buttons. And so they can say something to us that's innocent on the surface, but because we have all those unexpressed expectations from the past, all those scripts, all that history, we go deeper with it than we think. Let's say, your dad's elderly and he calls you, he's living in a assisted living home, or he's by himself 30 miles away or whatever, and he calls you and says, I feel all alone. Well, he's just speaking his heart, right? I'm alone. But what you hear, because you're busy with your kids and your career and your deadlines, is you hear shame. You hear, I'm not a good enough son or daughter. I'm not visiting him as often as he thinks I should, or even that I think I should. And so the tendency is what he has done in your mind, he's just thrown an emotional ball at you. Now, really, he just said, I'm alone. And you catch it, and 100% of the balls that you catch, you will throw back, and it'll be a bigger ball each time. Well, you'll say, well, you just don't understand, Dad. I'm busy with my son and daughter and my marriage, and you've just hurt his feelings. Because now it seems like you validated that he doesn't matter. And now you've got this tit for tat going, and the next thing you know, one of you hanging up the phone, and the whole situation's worse than it was to begin with. So we have to learn, and this is hard. Just respond to the words, not what you think is the meaning behind it. What would be an alternative way to handle that? I'm so sorry, Dad, that you feel that way. And let him continue on. He wants to process. If you were at the checkout line at your local grocery store, and the lady behind the register, she's checking you out, and there's somebody behind you, older man says, I'm all alone. I feel all alone. You're probably going to turn around to him and say, I'm so sorry you feel that way. You're going to show empathy and compassion. But see, we don't do that as readily with our family members because of that script thing. And because
with all
of that history.
the stories we've made up that we planted back here and forgot we made them up.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Yeah. We do. You make an F in 7th grade and you think that you say, somebody says, well, you're so stupid, and you plant that "I'm so stupid," and all it was an F, but you plant that "I'm so stupid" in back here, and the rest of your life you're going, see, I told you I was stupid. You continue, prove it to yourself over and over again, and self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So does that sound accurate to you?
That is accurate. Yeah.
We make this stuff up all over the time. It's stories we make up about something that happened.
And a lot of what you just described, not what actually happened, right? And a lot of that's what leads to, limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, lack of self-love. I mean, that whole umbrella, right, of limiting beliefs falls under that.
Totally. So what is your solution? What is your idea?
I don't have it.
How do you help people? You don't have it.
I just point them to the one that does have the answers. No, I mean, it is true. Without God, he's limitless, where we're so limited. Married couples, I try to help them reignite the gratitude in their marriage, but it's not going to work if they're not pulling in the same direction. I mean, I kind of equate it to a ladder, right? If the husband's on one side and the wife's on the other, it only works if they're both climbing the rungs of the ladder the same way, and they eventually reach the peak where God is. It's the same with any relationship. If one's pulling, the other's pushing, it's not going to work. You got to get them moving in the same direction, rowing in the same direction.
Right. And there comes a point. I mean, I'll tell you my little, I wish I had one with me. My grandbaby has Hazel, her little pink elephant. It's like one of the tools that I heard about and have feel like it's a really clever way is, so every so often I'll buy a stuffed animal elephant to newlyweds, right? And it's like, and with a little note and going, hey, when the beginning of that moment, when there's something wrong, you're like, he didn't put the toilet seat down and she didn't squeeze the toothpaste right, whatever, it starts with little things usually. But when those things start happening, and so often we let them build, and then, you're at the sink and he comes in and tries to say something and you're like, ah, and you garbage dump, What if you have a little whimsical tool? You take the elephant and put it on the coffee table or on the bed and go, and they have an idea that, okay, when I'm ready, we're going to have a conversation. And we can have a civil conversation rather than I walk in the door and I don't know what's hit me, right? Or why. So I think that's just a cute little whimsical way to have, if you really choose to do it, I think it would work. Hey, we need to talk. And he was like, we've been talking all day. What do you want to talk about? No, we don't talk. So have you ever heard of that? I just think it might help in your.
I love that. I'll give you an example. Well, it's parallel to that. My wife and I, several years ago, got into marital trouble where she was 48 hours away from calling a divorce attorney. This is probably the last thing. Well, it was the last thing that led us to be Christians, actually. And I remember in the process of trying to save our marriage, in addition to seeking God and Bible study and joining a fellowship, we were seeing a marriage counselor for a few sessions. And this is at the height of our problems. And she was describing something to Rebecca. And she said, how does this make you feel, Rebecca? Because she had lost a lot of weight, was stressed, because of my decisions. And she said, it's killing me. And she turned back, the counselor turned back around to me and said, Steve, what did you hear Rebecca say? She said, it's hurting me. She said, let's try that again, Rebecca, repeat what you said. No, it's killing me. and it really got my attention. And what we didn't know then was she was introducing us to the speaker listener technique, where I needed to listen, but then validate what my wife said. Is this what I'm hearing you say? Is there more that you want to tell me? And so it plays into what you're saying, because in the flow of life, if you're busy, you're not going to listen 100%. You're going to cut conversation short. I am not perfect at this by any stretch of the imagination, but what I try to do with both my family and with just people I know, if I feel like I'm only giving a piece of myself, or if I'm multitasking, I'll say, can we schedule a time to have this conversation? Because you're important, and I want to give my whole heart and be able to listen uninterrupted to you. So it's a little different, but I think it's the same concept of giving your all to that person, so they feel important in your presence.
That's is so critical. And the reason I'm not married probably is because I finally was like, I want to be heard. Mm-hmm. And what I also understood then, I was like, I want to be heard for what I'm saying, but also for what I'm not able to say. And that takes some real active listening. And that, when I recognized that I wasn't able to express it at the time, right? I didn't know, but that's where I feel like I came to. I want to be heard, and I want to be respected and somewhat understood in any relationship. And, it takes some maturity. It takes some, just loving people as who and where they are, and not taking things personally. So often, what you said earlier, you take everything personally, and then you're offended, and then you make assumptions. And then there's a book called The Four Agreements, which is one of the best books I've ever run across, about not taking things personally and making, not making assumptions. And the other two agreements are be impeccable with your word and always do your best. Love that book. And so that was in fact, I just ordered one. I give them away sometimes. And I was a little concerned back in the day, 20 years ago when I found it or whatever, but The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I think it was not in the Christian section, and I was a little concerned, but they're biblical principles completely, and help. I know for a fact, saved a lot of marriages when they realize that people are just saying what they say and doing what they do. And it's not against you. It's for them, or just what they do. And then in my tiny book, I have a forgiveness release I wrote for my little candy bar hugs. It doesn't take much to make a difference. I did what I did. I call it a forgiveness release in the dedication of my little book. I did what I did. I didn't do what I didn't do. I did all that I knew to do with what I knew at the time, just like you did and are doing in your life right now. I love you. And just relax, release, and let it go.
Yeah. Well, we're all maturing, right? Hopefully, we're all growing. We do, like you said, we do the best that we can with what we knew at the time. And, if you think about those people that have hurt us, most of the time it wasn't intentional either. They were doing the best they could at the time.
I've been thinking about that. I renewed that conversation I had with a little 16-year-old girl one day, I think, or 7, whatever, young teenager. Her father's getting remarried, and how dare he take it, move me away from my friends and my family. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he's not doing it against you. I believe he's doing it what he believes is the best for you and your family. It's not against you. It's more for him or his decision making, right? And so when you think about that, people are not they're rarely doing things against you. It's against, if it's harsh. And in the same little tiny book, it says unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness, not unconditional boundaries. If it's harsh, it's so often they don't love themselves enough. They don't love themselves enough. Bullies are victims too, I say. They don't love themselves enough to know how to have a good relationship, how to love others the way they don't have God's love in themselves for themselves.
Well, I'm 56 years old and still trying to learn all this. So I can't imagine a 15, 16-year-old. I'm thinking back to when I was 16. Most of us, by the time we're teenagers, our hearts are full of unprocessed emotions. And I always ask people, do you like all of Jesus's promises? And people, without thinking about that, like, oh, yeah, I like. Well, do you like the one where he says you will have trouble? And then the room goes quiet. Like, yeah, I don't like that one so much, but it's true. Like you said, life's going to keep lifing. People ask me all the time, how's life treating you? I said, life's beating me up, but God's still with me. It's just true. But life is going to keep happening, and it's not always fair, and it is hard. But we have to have tools to help us cleanse our hearts of those things that harden it and make us bitter and make us unforgiving and make us coarse. And I think people are looking for those things, but they don't always know where to find those tools. And just to tie gratitude back into that, gratitude can be a tool. There's more formal tools, but gratitude is a tool that helps soften the heart. And when I think about the parable of the 10 lepers, it's interesting that Jesus actually healed all 10. He gave them instructions to go to the priest, and they were healed on the way. Jesus wasn't even there when he healed them. Amazing, right? And only one came back to say thank you. And Jesus was moved by his gratitude. He was hurt. He said, where are the other 9? He was hurt that they didn't all come back and say thank you. So we have to dig deep and find a way to be grateful because it pleases Jesus, but it also is just good for us. It's good for our hearts.
Yeah, definitely. And so I asked you, what's one of your favorite quotes? And you said, hope is the bright light at the end of the tunnel when you thought for sure it was just another train. I love that. That's good. Yeah. You step in that tunnel and there's a light down there and you're like, train.
Here it comes again. Yeah.
That's a great one. How do you apply that in what you're doing?
That came from the adoption process. It was like every time, here comes hope again. Oh, it's another letdown. It's another letdown. And you've got to hold on. There's a brighter day coming. You got to keep going to the well. You got to keep going, not give up. It's hard. It's really hard. One of my favorite quotes, now I'm quoting somebody else, is the Chinese missionary, Hudson Taylor. And I might get it slightly wrong, but he said there's always 3 stages of every work of God. 1, it's impossible. So when you look at a situation initially, it's like, there's no way. In the middle of it, it's extremely difficult. 3, it's done. You don't know when your blessing's going to come, but one thing's for sure, if you quit, it won't.
Wow. Yeah. But God, right? So, and I just had a Zig Ziglar son has a Monday morning for 40 something years now, every Monday morning, a little devotional at 7:30 Central Time. And this last week, the girl talked about, she listed a whole bunch of miracles. And she said, what do they have in common from the Bible? And suddenly, there was wine. But suddenly, a 4-day-old stinking person walked out, Lazarus. So, and I love that. And so, my other book, Split Second Transformation, Change Your Words, Change Your Life, 31 Daily Practices, that is split second transformation. I had one that went from bitterness to joy. There's for one example, and by the way, 3 chapters in here out of 31 are about gratitude. So,
love that.
Yeah, you can't not have that. I know you have another book that you actually can pick up and show. Then read the title of that. We didn't mention that one yet, did we?
See that? That's this is the 30-day marriage journal I did back in March, reigniting the gratitude in your marriage. It's a 30-day marriage journal. It's got a prompt every day. It's got a daily reflection in one scripture, and it's got probably a little, there you can see it, plenty of room to journal on the opposite side.
Is it for one person or for the couple?
You know, that's the great thing about it. It can be done together or just one person can do it. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, then I'm sure that's on Amazon. So, very, very cool. So those are things that you're doing. You also offer courses, I think, don't you, to help?
I'm actually in a little bit of a shift right now. I've got a course. I got an 8-week course on marriage that also can help the couple together or just one spouse. And then I'm creating a new coaching program around what we talked about earlier. So we just touched on it a little bit about limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, lack of self-love, those kind of things. So it's more in the resilience coaching realm that I'm working on now. But yeah, those are a couple of things that I'm offering.
Oh, so good. So good. So we're winding down. It always goes fast. And I've just had so much insight. I feel like you've you've really brought a lot of insight here. And then the compelling story. And I'll just add, for me, I had a 8-month stillborn baby, my first child. And I didn't even tell anybody I was pregnant because of your scenarios for the first until after the 4th month. I think I was, and then you still. I didn't bring anything home, right? So it was Valentine's Day, actually. And, yeah, so I have a Valentine's baby memory, and she was, I got to see her. But, I ended up with 3 other amazing children, and I don't focus on that, but I can relate. I can relate, not the 5 like you did, but, so that's, she was, when it's over 8 months, that's a full term. And yeah, but guess what? I felt my doctor was like, it was, she was wrapped, the cord, something messed up, and you should be able to have children. And we did, so. Wow. Yeah, so we all have our stories. There's no one alive that doesn't have some story, some harder than others, some more miraculous perhaps than others, but they're all stories and when we've lived them, we need to get our stories out there. And that's why I have this show, to help people tell your story, get out there. How can we make a difference in the world and be the best we can be?
I love that. I just want to share real quickly, because it piggybacks off what you just said. I'm in the middle of launching a new private Facebook group called You Are Worthy Network. And it's right around what you just said. Like, the subtitle is Your Story's Not Over. And it's going to be me interviewing a lot of people on their comeback stories, their stories of hope, their testimonies. So it fits right in alignment with what you're talking about here. So I'm so grateful for you, Charla, and having me and talking with me today. It's been a treat.
Man, I just kind of get chills. This is so fun. It's my favorite hour of the day, just because of the week, because, so often we don't have deep conversations in our world. I'm fine. How are you? Great. I always say I'm fabulous, and it's a choice, right? So everything is choice, right? And I always say choose joy at the end of my show. So I love that you are leading with gratitude. And I listened to something this morning that was about gratitude, about choosing. And my last coaching session with one of my coaches is like, she says, write down, I choose, and so this whole theme this week around my world is choosing, so, and then you come up with your gratitude as a choice and choose it several times a day. And that we can do that. What if we breathe that little, because it's breathing in calm, my little exercise, breathe in calm, or breathe in who you say after I am is who you are. So breathe in who you choose to be, and then relax, release, and have gratitude as you exhale, right? So it's all interrelated, and I just love that. It's just like, oh well, just another miracle. Thank you.
That's
Not really.
what he does, right?
God is working in warp speed, in my estimation, right now. You better be careful how you speak. Speak what you desire, not what you don't. And desires of the Father, and then He gives you the desires of your heart. Every word matters. And I think so. I hear the demeaning, dismissive, cursing language that we call ourselves when you say, I am. That's God in you. So, yeah, I talk about that a lot for sure.
Wow, that's great.
Whatever you say after I am is who you are. And if you don't, you should never say something after the words I am, which is God's name in you, that you would not say about God. So when we're cursing ourselves, or I'm so stupid, or I'm so, whatever, cancel. I'm so sick and tired. Stop. Speak life. Speak life. Speak what you desire.
Wow.
So thank you. Do you have any last word? We're going to shut her down and put it in the can.
Three simple words. Hope is alive.
Hope is alive. It absolutely is. And if we reach out to either stevewormer.com, Steve Wormer, or Charla, if you have any concerns about having hope, because if you have a breath, if you can have been provided for, if you can breathe, take a breath. You have been provided up. If you don't like where you are, that next step might need to be a different step, but you can't change how you got to the step you're in right now. So take a breath, make a different choice if you need to. Reach out to Steve or Charla, and we're here to guide you. We're here. We love people with unconditional love. So thank you so much, Steve, for joining me today. It's been a huge blessing to hear your story, and I just had a great time.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Well, we'll see you next time, and remember to always, always, always choose joy.